All right, welcome back. So we are gonna start working with Firebase, which is cool. Um, Admittedly, in order to really do this app, there's a lot of UI that we have to build up. We have to make a recycler view, we have to do the dialogue, things like that. But we're gonna hop right into Firebase. And we're gonna write some code that, to be honest, we're gonna comment out at the end because we just wanna learn about Firebase a little this time. So let's do a quick high-level discussion of Firebase. So the way Firebase works is they have two different databases, right? And so you can store things in their traditional database, which is called the Firebase Real-Time Database. And then there's the newer one, which is called the Firestore. And we're using the newer one called the Firestore. I can give you a big long history of why there's two, but the short version is the real-time database is kind of like the company Firebase. It's what they made when they were all by themselves. And when Google bought them, they kept that around. And then the Firestore is really a combination of Google's had a thing called the data store for a long time, but it's kind of a merger of Firebase concepts and Google's data store. So when Google bought them, they made this new product called the Firestore. And both work very well. They do work differently. I'm going to choose to only tell you about the Firestore because for new projects, it's the one that's recommended. So that's what we're going to learn about. So Firestore is the word you care about. Whenever you're looking up documentation, Firestore is what you're after. The way the Firestore works is that basically it's a tool for saving objects. So you make a collection, which is just a name you would pick. So in our app, our collection is going to be called movie quotes. And then inside the collection are individual documents. And these you can think of as basically just objects, right? So they're objects, in our case, of type movie quote. And then each document has certain properties in it. These are these white lines. So in our app, we're going to have one collection and then many documents inside of it. You could also have numerous different types of objects. So for example, you could have user objects and item objects and game objects. And each of those would have, numerous objects of that type in it. But that's kind of the structure, is you have collections and then you have numerous objects in there. By the way, as your data gets more complex, you could also have collections inside of documents. So like, let's say that this is a calendar day, and inside the calendar day, there's however many events, and you could definitely get more and more complex data. So this is probably not what we're going to cover. Maybe a future unit will have multiple items, but today we're focused on just a single collection with documents in it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you need to do is you need to go to this website, console.firebase.google.com. So the actual domain is google.com, and there's a subdomain for Firebase, and then within Firebase, you're going to the console. So console.firebase.google.com is where you want to go. Once you're there, you'll see a list of projects. My guess is that you don't have any projects. So the only card you've got right now is add a new project. Eventually, you'll have a project, a little card for every project you make. I have a lot. I would have even more, except for I try to delete them whenever I'm done with them because I make them just for examples. So let's just go ahead and make a new one. You can see that I've already done this once. I've got UL movie quotes here, but I'm going to make a new one just so that you can be in the same place as me. So make sure you're on this website and click on Add Project with me. So what you need to do is you need to give it a name. I usually use kind of like a spinal case, and so I'll call mine movie quotes video. You can see if you already have the project with that name, it adds this crazy thing onto the end. What the heck, I'll say movie quotes UL video. And you can see that I don't have anyone called that, so I'll be able to make this. Make sure you accept the terms and conditions, and then you hit create project. Once you create the project, it takes just a little bit for it to finish. By the way, if you have problems with like firewalls where you're at, I don't have a solution for you other than to work somewhere where there's no firewalls, because that should all hopefully work. Once it's finished, it'll bring you to the kind of the overview page. You can kind of see that we're on the overview page. If you ever want to, like, come back and read some more, you know how to get back to the overview page. But what we've made here is we've made a Google Cloud project. Specifically, this is a Firebase project. Google Cloud, by the way, is their bigger suite of tools that includes App Engine, some of their big data things. But we've made a project, and the project name is Movie Quotes UL Video. Hopefully, you put your username and yours as the comment suggested. So let's go ahead and look around here. So a Firebase project has different things. It can be used to sign people in. It's called authentication. That'll be the next unit, not this one. It has the database, which is what we're concerned about. And you can see that there are two versions of the database. There's the Firestore, which is this kind of like top area. And then if I scroll down here somewhere, there's the real-time database, which still works just fine. It basically creates a JSON object and saves it. And then there's some videos that you could watch about it. I think that watching these videos would be great. You want to pause me and watch one of these videos. That would be good for you, right? I'm not going to play it right here. So Cloud Firestore is what we care about. There's more icons in here, but I care about the Cloud Firestore, so I'm going to go ahead and say create a database. The first question it asks you is about the rules. Do you want to start in locked mode, which locks down reads and writes until you're kind of ready, or do you want to start in test mode? We definitely want to start in test mode, so make sure you change it to test mode. What test mode does is it takes away the security rules while you're just getting started. And the security rules are that you can set who's allowed to see your data, who's allowed to write to your data, and we're not worried about the security just yet. Eventually, if you make a production app, you definitely need to worry about security. But to be honest, in this class, we're not that worried about it, right? We probably won't ever get into security. Security is a bigger topic than an introductory course. So it creates your Firestore, and it's setting up your security rules, which are blank, and it brings you into what used to be called the Forge, and it was called the Forge because it was Firestore, but it's where you can see your data, right? So you can see your data in here. You can also see your rules in here. There's a language for the security rules. We're not going to go into it. There's a thing called indices, which kind of get made for you, which is nice. But we could talk about those someday. But I'm not worried about it much. We're going to add some objects here, but let's go ahead and quickly go through the rest of this list. The next one down is storage. This is for like storing files, usually image files. Hosting, so Firebase can also let you host a website, so you can host using Firebase. Firebase functions, this is basically kind of like writing some backend code. Firebase is interesting because you can use it without writing any backend code, but if you want to write some backend code, like things that run on your server, functions is how you do it. And then ML Kit is, to be honest, fairly new. It's a machine learning kit that, to be honest, I haven't even played with much. And then there's also some analytics things down here. Let's go ahead and make some data just for fun. So you can see that the first thing it says here is add a collection. Let's just go ahead and manually add a collection, movie quotes. So you can name the collections whatever you want. Some people like to make it uppercase because it's kind of like, it's almost like a class of things of this type, but I'm going to do the lowercase movie quotes. And then immediately it's asking you to add your first document because a collection with no documents is kind of worthless. Each document has an ID. Typically, you just get an auto-generated ID, so I'll just click on Auto ID. And then you have whatever fields are appropriate for your object. So you've got a movie. I'll just say the Lego movie. And then we're also going to have a quote. And I'll just say everything is awesome from the Lego movie. You'll notice that when you have a document, you have different fields in it, and those fields can be strings, numbers, booleans, maps, arrays, nulls. You can read the rest. We just want 2 strings in this, which is pretty easy. So there we've created a collection called movie quotes, and we've added a document to it, which has this auto-generated ID. This is kind of like the unique identifier for this document. And then the document itself has 2 fields in here. So you can see how we're following this pattern quite nicely. And then we're also following this pattern, except for we only have 1 gray box, which is essentially right here. And we could add more. If you wanted to add another document just for fun, you could say, you know, add an auto ID. Let's go ahead and put in another quote. And this quote, I'll just type one that's short. I'll just say, "Yo, Adrian." And that is from the movie Rocky. Again, I choose movie quotes because they're really simple objects. There's 2 strings. You don't get much simpler than 2 strings. I'll also mention that right now I'm adding just 2 fields, a movie and a quote. Eventually we're going to add a 3rd field, which is a timestamp, which I'll call created. I'm not worried about that yet, but just kind of letting you know that eventually we're going to delete these. But now we have some data that's up in the cloud, which is fun. All right, we better go play with our Android Studio project. So right now it should be up and running where it was before. If you run it now, it just says hello world, which is expected. And what we're going to do is we're not going to worry about the UI for a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of put the UI over here. I'm just worried about the Firebase setup. So in order to set up Firebase, you need to use the menu and you need to hit Tools. Sorry, it's off the screen here. I don't know a good way to fix that. But if you hit Tools from your menu, there's actually a button on there called Firebase. Again, sorry, it's off the screen. And when you click on that word Firebase, it'll open up a little tutorial window, a little assistant over here. By the way, again, I think it's cool that these Rolls-Holman guys made this product that is now a button in Android Studio. I just think that's really neat. But anyway, there's a number of different tutorials inside of Firebase. You can learn about analytics, cloud messaging, which is notifications, authentication, the real-time database, which is the older one, storage, which is for files, some other things that I'm not going to tell you about, and then eventually you get to the newest and latest, which is at the bottom. Seems weird that the newest and latest is at the bottom, which is the Firestore. If you expand the Firestore area, you can see all the tutorials that are in the Firestore area. There's exactly 1 tutorial. So go ahead and click on the blue text here to launch this tutorial. And this tutorial is neat because it's a tutorial, like it tells you how to do things, but it also actually does some things on your behalf, which is cool. And so for example, I'm gonna make sure that I have nothing in my GitHub right now so that I can see what it does. So it's got 2 buttons here you can click. So usually tutorials tell you how to do things, and if you go to their online documentation, it does. But here you can actually just click a button, and it'll do stuff for you. So what it's doing is it's going to connect this project to your Firebase project. So sure enough, mine is weird. I just forgot what I had done wrong here. So I clicked on connect. And what it should have shown me is it should have said, it should have had 2 buttons. One was create a new Firebase project or use an existing. You obviously want to click the radio button for use an existing, and you probably only have 1 project in there, and you would click on that 1 project. Mine is messed up because my package name is already linked to this. I guess I know how to fix that, so I'll pause the video and I'll fix it. All right, there it actually is. All right, so now it says you can create a new project or you can choose an existing. We're going to choose an existing. You probably have exactly 1 thing in your project, but I have to actually find mine from the list. And then we'll say connect to Firebase. And so what that does is it says connecting to Firebase. And what it's doing is it's creating a file for you and syncing it to the cloud. Interestingly, mine usually does this. It says connect to Firebase failed, which is kind of concerning. But then I click it again, and it says that it's already worked. So I don't know why. So it says, yeah, it's already connected, and then you hit sync. So I don't know why there's the 2-step process right now. Something is obviously a race condition that's broken. It didn't used to do that, but you can see that it worked fine. Firebase project created and connected locally to the app module. And you can always go see and get what it did here, and you can see any changes that were made. The file that it actually made for you is actually not checked in to get, though. You don't have to go find it, but it's available somewhere in here. It made a file to sync it to your project. Not that worried about it. Then the next one says add Cloud Firestore to your app. And so we're going to go ahead and click on this button. It tells you what it's going to do. It's going to add this GMS, so Google Services, and then it's going to add some things to your Gradle file. And we'll say, sure, go right ahead and modify the Gradle file for me. I don't really like modifying the Gradle file. It will take a little bit to do this step because it modified the Gradle file and then it brought some things in. It looks like it threw some type of warning in here about like versions. I'm not worried about that versions thing. And then there's a button that said sync now, and so I always click sync now whenever I get a chance. Cool, and so that actually did bring in a couple things. It modified your Gradle file for you in a couple ways. It added the Firestore, and then it added this Google Services in 2 places. So this is add Firestore Gradle imports. Sure, it's good as word as any. All right, so now we are ready to start doing things with Firebase. So step 1 complete, step 2 complete. We're just going to follow on this along. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually write just a little bit of code inside the main activity. And what we're going to do is we're just going to follow their tutorial. And so we're going to put it right into on create. And so this is a temp Firebase testing area. And then to do comment out. So when we make the real app, we're going to put this in the right place, but I want to see things work quickly. I know everybody does. So we're going to follow their tutorial. So it says declare an instance of the Firestore. So the Firestore, you can see we just called it DB here. And the way you declare it is you say Firebase Firestore get instance. That's actually pretty easy. Add some data. So it tells you how things are saved, but it's actually just got a code snippet here to where you can add some data. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, this snippet, and I'm going to put this snippet into the floating action button, so the fabs on Click Listener. So they've got a snack bar that they make. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paste all this code into here, which will be kind of interesting. And then just so I've got some more screen real estate, I'm going to minimize the assistant. You can minimize it, by the way, and you can bring it back. It's pretty easy. I'm going to minimize it just so I have some more screen real estate. And you can see what they've got here. So inside the snack bar, they are making an object called user. I don't like the object being called user, so I'm going to right click on it and say refactor, rename. Oops, off the screen here, but refactor, rename. And then I'm going to rename, sure, the code occurrences with MQ. So this is my movie quote. So in their example, they're putting up something called a user. We're going to put up a movie quote. And a movie has a movie and a quote. I don't know why, but I always like to do the quote and then the movie. And the movie quote that we're going to put up is just going to be a silly little test, right? So this is quote number, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and make a counter. So make a temp counter. This is optional. I'm just going to add a quick little counter just to kind of make it more fun. Because if I were to type something in and I were to click the button 5 times, it would add the same movie quote each time. But if I make a counter, which I have not declared yet, but I will, then it'll actually kind of change each time, right? So I'm going to say counter equals temp counter +1, and then each time it'll get higher. So I'll have like movie 1, movie 2, movie 3, movie 4, just for fun, right? I do need to go declare this temp counter, and I'll just do that up here. Private int temp counter equals 0. All right, so I declared my counter just to make the data that I add more fun. And then whenever I click the fab, it's going to say this snack bar. So I'll just say added some data. Oh, what the heck, I'll say, right, added a Firestore document. And then we'll we'll take off the action because we don't really want the action. Eventually that snack bar is going to get deleted, but I'm just going to have it now just so you get some visual feedback that says you added a Firestore document. And then it says add the document with a generated ID. And so we're going to put it into the database. By the way, it can't access that because it needs to be declared final. Final. It just means that that pointer won't point to anything else. And we're going to add things to our collection of movie quotes. Things like this, by the way, these are kind of like magic strings that need to be typed exactly, and if they're typed wrong, everything breaks. Whenever you have magic strings like that, you really should create a file to like keep all your constants. Maybe we'll do that later. And so it says, hey, Firestore, collection movie quotes, add this new object. And so you can see this new object is just a map. And then there's this on success listener and on failure listener. These you don't really have to have, to be honest, because they just tell you that it was successfully added or if there was an error. To be honest, since they're not required and we're just learning, I'm going to take them off, right? Because the only code that you have to have is this right here. Collection movie quotes, add our new movie quote. So we could actually run it right now. So let's go ahead and run it. And what we could do is we could click the button and then we could watch our back end, which will be more interesting. So mine is launching. So it's coming up here. And every time I hit the floating action button, maybe I'll just kind of put it over here, then it'll add a new quote over here. So I think mine has since launched. Oops, there it is. So now when I hit the button, it'll say added a Firestore document. And sure enough, over here, you can see that I added movie quote number 1. Cool. And I can click it as many times as I want. So there I added another one, and then I added another one, and then I added another one, and then I added another one. So I'm actually doing a pretty advanced task right now. I'm pushing data from my phone. So I mean, I can just click my phone right here, and it's actually getting saved like to the internet, which is cool, right? I've got a whole bunch of these movie quotes, which I'm going to eventually all delete later. But I'm pushing things to the cloud, which is neat. Let's go ahead and do a read. So I'm going to bring back my system. And so this is how you add data. So we've done step 4. And then how do you read data? So read data here is step 5. Now there's a couple different ways to read data. We're going to use their example right here, just because it's simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this after where I made the database, but before the floating action button code. So I'm just going to pop this guy right in here. You can see that he is reading the users collection, whereas that's not what we want to read. We want to read the movie quotes path. Again, this is a magic string that has to be the exact same here and exact same there. Maybe we'll make a constants file out of it at some point. And it's doing a .get. .get is get one time. Normally, we'll use the real-time database, but for this example, .get is just fine. This code all works except for these two things that say tag. They're in red. Tag is just a string. We could make a tag really quick. Let's just make one really quick. So we'll say public static final string tag, and we'll make it equal to movie quotes. These words, by the way, public means any class can use it, not just me. Static means it's on the class, not on the objects. Final means it's not going to change. And string is what type of variable is it? It's a string variable, and it's a tag. And this is only useful for your logs, which are good. So now if we run it, if we kind of look at this code a little, but not a lot, it says add completion listener. If it was successful, do a loop where you log every document. So you could go look at the app here, but nothing's going to happen there. The thing you have to look at is, of course, the logcat. And then the logcat, make sure I'm doing the logcat for my Motorola. If you look for MQ, you'll find only the quotes in here. And you can see all the quotes that you have in your back end. So I see everything is awesome. And so that one popped up. And then I see an 8, a 9, a 7. Looks like sometimes it printed this this like prefix to the log, and sometimes it didn't, so that makes it kind of confusing. But I can see everything. I can see awesome, numbers all the way up to 9, and then here's Yo Adrian. So I'm actually not showing anything in my app, but I'm actually doing a very powerful thing, and that's pulling data down from the cloud. And that's really the core of what you do. You push things up and you pull things down. Great. Now I'm going to do this to do. I'm going to comment this stuff out. This is good for my reference for later, but it's not really the right place for this kind of code, right? So I commented out all of that area, and then I commented out, I'm going to go and get rid of my comment there. I commented out this area here as well. So when we go to implement it in the right place, the code's going to be useful, but it really isn't in the right place just yet. So let's go ahead and check it in, even though it's largely just commented out. Make sure it's saved here. There we go. So we've got a lot of comments out there and comments out there. So this is testing Firebase in the wrong place for now. Cool. So we know that when we get to that, it's not going to be scary because we've already done it. Pushing and pulling things from the cloud, totally doable for us. All right, come back next time and we'll start building up the app so that we can put the Firebase stuff into the right place. See you then.